I wanted to talk about this topic for a while now because in this road we have walked so far, we've traveled through different areas, through different areas of knowledge, such as uh, such as biology, history, genetics, futurism, um, archaeology, psychology, and all that. But the thing is that, my friends, I really wanted to talk about the brain. But it's interesting because every time I think about the brain now, I think about the hunter gatherers. Unfortunately, I'm going to talk a lot about the hunter gatherers. Probably I would talk as much as I talk about mandalas. I'm saying that like everything is mandala and hunter gatherers. That's funny other than anything. But the thing is that the brain is for me one of the greatest biological structures in the universe. It probably is. Because I think about that. According to science, what do we have? We have that the brain has as much connections as the universe. That is weird and amazing at the same time. In a mathematical logic, the structure of the brain is similar to the structure of the whole universe. Just that is enough to bug our minds. In talking about the mind, we have to understand as well that the brain is the material way to manifest the mind. Without the brain, we don't have the mind. And that's interesting to think about because, for example, in the Matrix franchise, there is that moment in which Neo asks to Morpheus if he died in the Matrix, what would happen? And then Morpheus answered, the brain cannot live without the mind, and probably the mind cannot live without the brain. You know what I mean? So, thinking about that, we have to understand that the brain, as a material thing, as an organ of the human body, of our bodies, it came to be after a long process of changes and transformations. My friend, let's think about that for a second. Since the beginning of life in the universe to the moment of the arise of the birth of the brain, of the human brain to be more specific, because if we go to other brains, the thing get really messed up. But let's talk about the human brain. The path that life walked on is marked with those points of inflection. The brain is the most magnificent structure in the universe, and I think really about that because it is capable of everything, including the manifestation of the universe. Because when we see, for example, in Buddhist philosophy, in neuroscience, the perception is created by the mind. So everything is created by the mind, and that is the thing to think about, my friends. When you talk about the brain, we talk about this. Now we have computers. It's a type of computer, but it is a bio-organic material, and it is ugly, man. When you see our brains, like in the picture or drawings of brain, the brain is like a bunch of worms always mashed together. But in the micro level, at the cellular level, we have the neurons. And when we go to the neurons, what do we see? We see that everything happens at an electrical level. Recently, I've been attending this treatment for my injury, for one of my last injuries, and the doctor is using electrical stimuli to change my situation. And it is interesting because the change is happening. It's improving. It's the first time I had this type of treatment. So what I'm gonna go back to, let's go back to the electrical type. The electric part of what is happening in the brain. The brain is like this box of electrical current happening. But that's the thing. The cells, in the way the cells are arranged in the brain, in the organization, the material, the structure of the brain, shows that it is, and now when we look from our standpoint, is not so good, but it's like a perfect machine. And my friends, the brain uses a lot of energy to function. I think the brain is what uses more energy, if I'm not incorrect. But that's understandable, right? The brain controls everything. And when I looked at the hunter-gatherers and what happened to them, it gets more tangible. My thesis that I'm beginning to write now, because we lived for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, doing things in a completely different way they're doing now. And remember, we lived as hunter-gatherers for thousands of years, and much more than we live in a civilization, in cities and all that. Remember, the birth of agriculture that took place about 10,000 years ago changed everything. But before that, we know very little. But what we know shows that the life was completely different. In the basic aspects of life, maybe they were not, like in the physiological sense, but in the experience itself, and what the individuals need to encounter, and how they need to react to survive, how they needed to live. You know what I mean? And the brain had these inputs for thousands of years. And after agriculture, we changed so fast into this material, dystopic world based on money and all that, and appearances, that we need to look back, to look to the beginning, not the beginning, the greatest part that now is completely lost, but lives within each and every one of us, because our DNA holds those informations. And the brain connected to the DNA manifests reality. You know what I mean? The perception of each individual creating its own reality. That is something to consider, my friends. And that's the message I wanted to bring today. When you think about the brain, we have to understand that each and every one of us has a brain. And the brain has a gigantic capacity, a giant capacity to create. And let's think about that for a second. What do we want to create? What do we want to do? What is the footprint we want to leave? We already destroyed so much, we already killed so much, and we claim to be rational beings. Yeah, from the biological sense, okay, our brain is very complex, you know, it's different from the other animals and all that. But when we look at our history, we see that at some point something went wrong. But it wasn't like that, I think. Of course, right, I understand that when people say that the world was never a so nice place and all. And I'm writing about that. We had a lot of death when we were hunter-gatherers in our past. We lost a lot of children, a lot of people died. But we can agree that the awareness of those people was different from ours. And when you go to that, we see that the difference is how they use their brains, what they use their brains for. And they use it to find the survival in each and every day. But different from us, they were doing as a group mostly. They were doing in the spirit of going together, of togetherness, because together they had more chance to survive, and they learned together, and they loved each other probably, and they were free because they were on the move. They were moving all the time. They were changing their place. They are finding harmony with the nature to survive. And unfortunately, we are not doing the same nowadays in the 21st century. But we have a choice. And I think the choice is obvious. We should choose the same: cooperation, togetherness, because it's already too late. And the brain is a circular, is a spheric, elliptic structure. After all, everything is mandala.